from New York, Claudia Tenney. She is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. So, Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here. I mean, when I talk to lawmakers, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, everybody agrees we can't renege on the debt, but we got to do something about all the deficit and the debt we're piling up. So how do we get out of this?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's President Biden's words there are needlessly divisive. I think that a lot of us agree, and nobody wants us to default on our debt. But what we're looking at is the future. How do we bring our spending down? Because it's creating inflation. We've spent a huge amounts. We're coming off a pandemic, which is part of the reason. And we have this huge spending that occurred during the pandemic because of the extraordinary situation. But now we're putting ourselves in a precarious situation where we're actually threatening the stability of our economy with such high costs. The consumer price index is up another 6.4% this year over last year, over record years or nearly record years. We haven't seen this type of increase since the 70s. And so you're really seeing the pain to Americans across, especially the middle and lower income tax brackets and small business owners, and our ability to grow and prosper and to have that is how we're going to get out of this situation. So all we're asking President Biden to do is come to the table and talk about ways that we can stop this out of control spending, bring everything under control, find solutions to fraud, abuse, and waste that we've seen to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, whether it's through the payroll protection plan, where we saw it was taken advantage of, to unemployment insurance fraud that is estimated by the CBO or the General Accounting Office at $60 billion. And others came before the House Ways and Means Committee last week and said it was closer to $190 billion. And some others have estimated it could be as much as $400 billion. And I think what people need to recognize is that we put so much stress on the system and people that were doing these jobs, unemployment employees and the bureaucracy, putting the stress on the PPP plans, which, by the way, we just really caused a huge problem. And he said, oh, yes, all this debt was created. But, Joe Biden has created over $10 trillion in debt in his short term in office. And under Nancy Pelosi's leadership as speaker in the two different times that she was speaker, we have amassed 40% of our national debt. And so I say it's not, you can blame Republicans all that you want. But I mean, both parties are contributing to this because we are trying to deal with and manage a situation where we really need to come up with solutions and not this demagoguery and rhetoric that you're hearing, especially from President Biden.
And that's just what I like to talk about, because I think everyone can agree we got a problem, and whose fault it is almost doesn't matter at this point. Maybe if it's just both sides, it deserves some blame. But have you seen anybody with the plan or a beginning of a plan or a part of a plan that could fix this? I don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat. Have you seen anybody come up with something concrete that might help work?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're trying to come up with a solution that over the course of 10 years, I think a lot have looked and said, what is expiring under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that we need to continue in order to get the growth that we need? Now, we have record amounts of revenues coming in on the tax side. The problem we have is we need growth. And we need to be able to pay our bills. And in spite of the record revenues, we're not paying for our spending. So we're out of sync. And I think that's pretty easy to look at. So what we need to do is look at how can we cut the spending? Where do we go to places where we don't need to spend, where we have solutions that don't need to be resolved by this huge spending that occurred over the pandemic era? So I think we have options. I mean, one of the things that Joe Manchin did not want to see a reduction or removal of work requirements when it comes to the child tax credit in the Inflation Reduction Act, where the Democrats had an opportunity to solve this problem through that, but they didn't. We would like to see research and development continue and make that permanent under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or at least extend it for another 10 years so that we have innovation, technology, and growth here in the United States, and not something that's continued to be sent overseas, as we saw the disruption in our supply chains, our dependence on China, where we have over $1 trillion in loans to China, where they're actually coming into our country and leveraging us just like they leverage with their Belt and Road Initiative around the world.
Right.
So I think that there are a lot of bipartisan solutions that we're going to be working on in the Ways and Means Committee as to what we keep as permanent, how we cut this fraud, abuse, and waste, and where we actually can reduce government and at the same time make sure that we keep Social Security in place. And I think that's one of those talking points that every Democrat, and particularly Joe Biden, says, oh, the Republicans want to cut Social Security. Absolutely not true. I just came out with a resolution on the floor last week that would protect Social Security and express the sense of Congress, and especially the Republican side, that we know that Americans have paid into Social Security. I myself have been paying into Social Security since I was 16 years old. I'm now eligible for Social Security if I choose to take it. But we want to make sure that Americans who use their hard-earned tax dollars and their own money and their earnings put into Social Security, that it's there and it's in a growth situation, not being rated by different programs coming from the federal side. So we protect Social Security. We find areas where we have fraud, abuse, and waste, areas where maybe we don't need to be spending on, and bolster Social Security, maybe even increase it. But, there are problems that once you get your Social Security COLA, cost of living increase, we end up having a huge cost in Medicare and healthcare costs. And that's something that's residually happening everywhere because of Obamacare and the takeover in so many areas. And I think I'm a New Yorker, so New York is probably the worst case scenario when it comes to the damage done by Obamacare. I'm a small business owner, and I know with our family plan, we pay almost $28,000 a year for a family plan. And that's before people even get into work and earn wages that are among the highest in the nation. And we compete with states that have $7.50 minimum wage when we have almost a $15 minimum wage. So I said economic issues are really important when you look at the states and how we're all, spending. If you want an ideal incubator to show you how taxes and spending don't work for job growth and creation, New York is a perfect example of that.
Congressman, there's a lot there to chew over. I hope you'll come back because there's a lot more to talk about that I'd love to have the chance to do with you. But thank you for this. That's Republican Representative Claudia Tenney of New York.